Many pigeon fanciers ask about inbreeding. It appears that most pigeon fanciers do not know the subject and often sow confusion. In this video we will attempt to elucidate in detail inbreeding in pigeons. Unfortunately, it is not possible to start the debate directly without having first introduced some notions of biology. For the good understanding, we will cite as an example, plants and animals. They are made up of cells. Each cell contains a nucleus which bathes in the cellular environment. In the nucleus, there are very special filaments which are called chromosomes and which support in a specific order the genes which contain the chemical material involved in the transmission of hereditary characteristics. Genes are the units of inheritance. Each animal species has a specific number of chromosomes. The pigeon has 80. The chromosomes are 2 by 2, so the pigeon has 40 pairs of chromosomes. Each pair of chromosomes has a characteristic appearance and shape: elongated, short, thick, thin, stick-shaped, or curved, so that an expert can recognize them. The two chromosomes in a pair are called homologous chromosomes. While they look the same on the outside, they are not necessarily the same. This is because the genes that a chromosome supports may be different from those of its counterpart from a purely genetic point of view. The alternate forms in which a gene can appear are called alleles. The starting point of an organism is made up of a female cell, the egg fertilized by a male cell, the sperm. This fertilized egg will split into 2 daughter cells, then later into 4, and so on until another creature is created. Before a cell gives rise to 2 daughter cells, each chromosome will divide lengthwise into 2 equal parts. This is accompanied by a split in each gene. This basic process occurs with every cell division, so that every cell in the pigeon's body is found to have the typical 80 chromosomes. Inbreeding is considered by many pigeon fanciers as a shameful disease, indeed very poorly defined, but which often serves to explain or justify the many problems and failures encountered in pigeon breeding. It is therefore useful to demystify this notion, very poorly understood most often, and confused with anything else. In the genetic sense of the word, inbreeding is cultivation between members of the same family. If we cultivate between members of the same family, it is because they all have qualities that we seek to reproduce. We will therefore cultivate in consanguinity a family where there are many good pigeons, in order to try to increase the percentage of good pigeons revealed each year. But the characters of each pigeon are multiple. There are those that we see, palpate, it is the phenotype, such character of the framework, long, short, deep, flat, etc., of the plumage, color, shape of flight feathers, thickness of the cover plumage, of the eye, etc. There are the hidden, recessive, traits that can reappear when they also exist in the spouse, hidden. This is the genotype. And then there's what we're all looking for, sporty quality. We can see that, we try to explain it, but it is not obvious. All the theories that have emerged throughout the history of pigeon racing were all aimed at detecting the right pigeon. The whole art of inbreeding will therefore be to breed together pigeons with similar physical characteristics, equal sporting value and having a common origin. Indeed, many hereditary characteristics are with multiple genes. For example, the color of the iris. You would think that the character red eye is a simple character and that when you mate a red eye with a white eye, you shoot red-eyed young and white-eyed young. It's much more complicated than that. In each basic color, either brown, yellow, red, white, there are several genes, hereditary character. As brown dominates the yellow-red which in turn dominates white, no pigeon has a pure eye. For example, a red eye contains not only at least one yellow character but also perhaps a white character. Hence the extreme variability in the color of the offspring's eyes depending on whether there are more or less yellow characters compared to red and white, recessive, characters. We can only say that there is pure color when the eye is white, although this eye is more or less sanded with pink. We see the extreme complexity of the case. Let us add that in macaques the iris is discolored in proportion to the white feathers and then appears partially black. In fact it is discolored and it is the retina, black, that we see in the back of the eye. The mating between brother and sister, on the condition that both are excellent carrier pigeons, results in a very good proportion of good pigeons, perfectly normal pigeons. These pigeons from brother and sister are also good breeders, in particular when paired with a spouse also from a brother and sister of another origin. Each pigeon fancier wants to improve the quality of his colony by discarding unsuitable birds, sorting and choosing his future breeders as best as possible, selecting. By this method he tries to fix the favorable characteristics of his favorites. First, it should be noted that the right characteristics are not the same for everyone. So there are many pigeon fanciers who like above all to have a uniform colony from the point of view of shape and color. These are inspired by what happens with fancy pigeons. It is indeed a relatively easy task to fix certain characteristics like the color of the plumage and to quickly achieve a certain uniformity. They forget that we are dealing with carrier pigeons. When it comes to quantitative characters, this is the case in the carrier pigeon. We come up against the difficulty of recessive genes, the latter only appearing if the genes are present in the double state, homozygous, one from the father and one from the mother. This is easier to achieve by mating related subjects since they are more likely to be endowed with the same factors. Now if we take into account that the recessive factors are mostly unfavorable, we better understand the dangers associated with the practice of wing length, etc. Improving competition results is what interests us most. Is it possible to obtain additional value from the carrier pigeon? In principle yes, but to be convinced of this, you just have to think about the financial means that are needed, as well as the space necessary for the implementation of such a project. I believe that even the immense facilities, which some pigeon fanciers currently have, with several thousand pigeons, could not be sufficient to hold several pure lines then crossed between them. Add to this the difficulties of limited multiplication, it is not possible to chain rear pigeons. There are however indications which do not deceive. These are the pedigrees of national and international winners or other cross-country champions. I am convinced that it is not possible to give recipes on how to proceed to achieve the goal. What equipment should I take at the start? What are the limits not to cross in the practice of consanguinity? This is always the case when everyone's situation is different. This is how everyone, for example, has a predilection for a game system or for a certain distance. Confidence in the pedigrees is indeed very important. It allows to verify if the pigeons come from multiple crosses or if they belong to a noble family where the chances of bringing out favorable combinations are higher. In addition, I would like to insist upon a few important points and especially for those who have to work with limited means. 1. To form a colony or for a new introduction, it is preferable to acquire the base from serious, trustworthy amateurs who specialize in the same type of game as the one envisaged. It is better to have pigeons from 2 lofts than birds from many pigeon fanciers. 2. Do not be seduced by the past glory of the big names. 3. Anyone who can afford to buy a prize-winning pigeon with a view to putting it into production should also know that its pedigree is as important as its price list. The pedigree must mention more than the sire and the mother. It must span several generations. 4. Above all, do not play with purchased animals which must be used as a base and wait until you have a certain number of offspring before carrying out tests. 5. At the beginning of the formation of the colony, it is necessary to basket the young bred and especially the females often in the competitions and not to be satisfied to play a few well prepared on 1 or 2 stages. They are therefore all placed in the same circumstances, which makes it possible to pass a valid judgment with a view to selecting them. When making this selection, you should always be mindful of the results and not be swayed by the details. 6. Be very careful with close inbreeding and prefer family breeding in a closed system, however allowing limited introduction of new animals over the years. If possible, you should always try to introduce pigeons that have a bit of blood in common with the good yachts you already own. When a crossover suit works well, there is no doubt, something special happened. The specific gene pairs are of such high quality compared to the others that they tend to dominate. This is called superdominance or epistasis. This exceptional effect only occurs in very rare circumstances. There are very few known examples where these repeated combinations have worked so well and produced many champions. This must be very carefully cultivated, because success at this frequency and at this level requires little more than mere luck. To finish, no longer be afraid of inbreeding. but learn to use it.